Okay, it's Monday. It's the beginning of November. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here. This is the Daily Medicine transmission for November 1st, 2021. If you can believe that we're in November already. So welcome back, everyone, to my subscribers and my regular viewing audience, the clients that have made this work that I have been called to do that much more important and real. So, and if you're new here, welcome. Thank you for stopping by. And as always, whenever you subscribe, you hit that like button, you comment on this content, or you share it with others. It does actually impact the AI algorithm that suggests this video onto people's recommended feeds and just spreads it out to a wider audience. So if you find it helpful, inspiring, or just entertaining at the very least, or just something that, maybe is thoughtful, or brings up that thoughtfulness within you and consider some new things, then just go ahead and find a way to participate, because that actually does make a difference. So, and if you want to support this work financially or monetarily, you can go to Subscribestar. That's in the description box below. And that actually will allow you to subscribe for $3 a month, and support all of this daily content that I offer. So, here we are. We're on Monday, November 1st. How was the weekend for people? Boy, how was that sun square Saturn? There were a lot of situations that I personally interacted with or held space for other people that were very much in line with that Sun square Saturn aspect that happened over the weekend. That was really, really powerful. And we talked about it on Friday, how it would be kind of a huge ego battle between these two aspects of ourselves, and maybe something manifesting outside of us or coming to us to challenge us. That is definitely for sure. There were many aspects that I interfaced with that were certainly challenging people in many different ways. And the thing about Saturn is that it's not moving away from what it represents. It is it's the sands of time, each grain slipping through the hourglass, and there's really no stopping it, is there? And so there's a certain amount of responsibility and authority, and some boundaries that come along with Saturn. You're not really moving those boundaries with Saturn. And so the sun is very powerful, as we are going to discuss here in just a moment, in terms of its impact on us and the planet, and is the source of all of the life on this planet, is directly related to all of the aspects of the sun. But there is something very grounding about Saturn that we can't really get around. So I'm curious to see how people are doing, and how that made itself known to you during your weekend. It was Halloween weekend, of course, and so there was a lot of, I'm sure, festivity and focus on that as well. And if you have kids, and if you're into the trick-or-treating thing, or if you're just being festive with the veil is very thin. Let's just put it that way. So however you choose to really interact with Halloween, it's a time where, when I say the veil is thin, it is thin, right? That's with the ancestors, that's with different types of beings. It's with the truth. Right? It's definitely with the truth and the feeling of the truth. So today's transmission is really dedicated to those who are actually really feeling it right now. And I'm going to be very honest, I am feeling it right now. I am feeling it in my heart. This is a difficult time for the empath, and it's a difficult time for Pleiadian starseeds and empaths, So if you go on social media, and this is in no way meant to discourage people from, moving towards the things that bring them joy and being optimistic about their lives and really having some gratitude. But it's this time of year, especially in the Northern Hemisphere because of the particular seasonal climate as well. But it's this time of year, especially this Scorpio time where, there's a lot of options and there's a lot of momentum for all of us right now. But it also means that we're feeling into all of it. And this is a difficult time, I think, for empaths because the bond that unites comes with all of the baggage, right? And we talked about this on Friday with Uranus, how Uranus has shifted into a new position now, a new degree in its retrograde, which means it will go back over this point later in the year. And we will revisit what it is feeling like for all of us internally right now in terms of the psychological crisis, the radical reorientation, almost the forced individuation that Uranus represents, the turning things on its head in order to change your perspective, all of these things with Uranus. And now we are really addressing all of this territory in particular with the baggage. And if you are keeping a lot of baggage, if you are holding on to a lot of baggage, and I'm not suggesting that's a good or a bad thing, it's just what it is. And if you are connected to people who are really struggling right now, and there are a lot of people who actually are really struggling right now, and it's very tempting, I would say, to kind of sidestep that and hyper focus on ourselves. And of course, there's something to be said for that. But if you're a Scorpio person, right, you know how you're feeling it very deeply right now. And your life could be just fine, but you are feeling into other people's struggles, other people's experiences, and having that empath experience. And we don't want to get lost there. It's really easy to get lost there. And there's a lot of baggage that comes along with the compulsion for material gain. And we're all going to be addressing that when it comes to our collective awakening process, right? Uranus rules Aquarius. It's not just about us. That's a very Leo thing. And boy, did we go through that with the moon in Leo. But now the moon is in Virgo and it's going to move into Libra today. And there's been, this was a good time over the weekend to really get very detail oriented and meticulous about ourselves, especially our emotions, because right now is the time where that's going to be, I think, the most important, because you don't want to take this baggage with you into the new moon, because there's a lot of potential for where we could go with this new moon, but we also we can't just stuff it away. And that's a real tendency when you're like, I don't like feeling uncomfortable. I don't want to feel depressed. I don't want to feel hopeless or just, weighed down. So this transmission is really about, it's really for those who actually are feeling into all of the feels, including myself, that go along with the full range of experience of being bound together. Time may be an illusion, but our relationships and the energy between them is not. And when you're really connected into people, you tend to pick up on what they're experiencing and having a really direct experience of it. And, the rattlesnake has come up in these readings so many times now leading up to this point that it seems like it's been giving us the preparation for what it means to be truly compassionate, because you have to be able to identify actual suffering that other people are having in order to do so. And again, it's very easy to get caught in one side or ensnared in one side or the other of all of what's going on, right? It's very easy to get caught up in the darkness of it and the real struggles that people are very much going through. And it's also just as easy to get caught up in that ambition for some sort of gain, and knowing that there is baggage that goes along with it, and kind of cutting out the fact that other people exist. And how do we manage that? How do we actually hold space for ourselves, stay within a frequency of joy and optimism and reverence, right? And gratitude for what is in our lives, but also be able to experience the full range of what it means to be in a collective situation, right? These institutions become institutions based on the productivity of multiple people or multiple beings coming together. And you can't, it's an interesting dynamic right now. And it's also very tempting to just kind of like burrow into your own experience and not really acknowledge what else is going on outside of you. And the real test of your, in my opinion, the real test of, your resolve and your faith is being able to keep that level of gratitude and optimism and joy for your life when you are being challenged at your, to the fullest extent. It's really easy to be joyful and optimistic and totally excited about what's coming when everything is working out for you. Not everything works out for us all the time, but we certainly are given opportunities, and Jupiter in Aquarius is making that really obvious to us. And with the Mercury in a trine to Jupiter, we'll get into all the astrology in just a minute. Because there's a lot here that's, on the one hand, giving us this opportunity to feel very deeply with all of this Scorpio energy. And then at the same time, we have a lot of optimism and we have a lot of opportunity to see where we could go and to be supported in that process. So it's not easy to maintain that level of optimism and maintain that level of grounding even in the face of very real and very raw and very potent feels. And I would rather be authentic and raw rather than paint a picture that's not even real just so that I can stay within, for me, it would be fake, right? To not be, I can't not be myself at this point. And so I do acknowledge to a certain extent that my personal feelings are influencing where a lot of this larger reading is going, but I also know better and know that I'm not the only one that is going through this. And of course, my own personal conversations with people and what they're experiencing and what they're really going through is, it's just endless. It seems to be endless, right? And so we're waiting, and lots of good things have happened, and a lot of things are coming to the surface that are showing us that people are taking responsibility for themselves. And that is a great thing. But if you're feeling it, it's okay, right? There's nothing wrong with you. You're not hyper fixated on the doom and gloom if you are actually giving yourself the space to just feel things. And maybe, there's some realism that goes along with actually acknowledging these feelings. And especially with Scorpio. Scorpio people know exactly what this feels like because it's the depth, right? It is the depth of the feeling. It is into the shadow where you can't really get away from yourself. And so, what is the bond that's going to unite us? Because there's no getting away. There's no getting away from what other people are experiencing. And I feel like I've been really putting a lot of emphasis on this idea that there's not going to be necessarily this living alongside tyranny without it eventually bleeding over into your life. Because how can you live with yourself if that's the case? Now, we're all doing the best that we can, right? We are. And for those who are doing specific work that is facilitating people's own awakening process, facilitating or healing, doing healing work with other people so that they can pull themselves out of maybe a feedback loop that they've been in for a long time, or maybe to just give some insight into a new way of thinking about things. There's a lot of different ways for all of us to be involved together in this process. But I don't feel right. I don't feel right, and I would feel fake if I pretended that this is, somehow not a time where people are going to start really feeling the full range of what we've created over many generations together as a human species. Like, even if we don't, we haven't participated in this life necessarily to create these larger structures, we still are responsible for them. That's what the second house really represents, is that we have created over time. We still have the same. We have been endowed with the karma of our ancestors, and whether we like it or not, we're going to have to account for that and not. I really didn't want to come on here today, honestly, because that's how bad I'm feeling about everything. I'm just, not that I think that it's hopeless, but I just feel like that the full range of what we are all dealing with isn't even remotely being addressed at this point. There's just so much right now. And I have a lot of Scorpio in my chart. I have a stellium of Scorpio, a Venus in Scorpio, Uranus in Scorpio. My midheaven is Scorpio, right? I have a lot of 8th house too. I have Pluto, North Node in the 8th house. Like, it's just a lot right now. And this is not about me. This is about the fact that I know that I'm not the only one. So I'm going to pop over to the chat. Lots of tension over the weekend. My release valve aspect is being utilized big time. You know what? Because that's where Vesta is right now. Asteroid Vesta. It's getting insanely difficult to read anything coming out of Australia without getting caught up in it. See, this is what I'm talking about. It's like, if we have to manage ourselves and stay healthy, because part of all of what's happening here is so far what I've come to about all of this is that a lot of it has been scripted and being brought forward in order to keep us in this kind of feedback loop. And so you don't want to get caught up in it. And we all are dealing with this right now, but at the same time, to not acknowledge the real suffering that's happening to people all over the world continually, that is a part of the controlled demolition for a very small group of people. And by the way, 2 different factions of people who think they know what's best for everybody, duking it out, while we're all kind of just like, just the pawns in the middle here. It's hard not to feel like kind of hopeless about it all. And to maybe just like kind of get caught up in the, how do I say this? Fantasy of ascension, right? And everybody's got their position to be in. Everybody is where they are, need to be at a soul level and experiencing what they are meant to experience. And so this is not a judgment on where everybody else is at, but I'm just being real with where I'm at, and knowing that it is, there's just so many situations. So I'm going to get into the reading. And the reason I had this huge diatribe leading up to this is because you're going to see how dire the reading starts out. And again, I have no problem being like, yeah, this is a lot of how I'm feeling right now. Waking up this morning and going into meditation, it was pretty clear, that this is how I'm feeling right now too. But I also know that I'm not the only one. And so I want to be able to give space and acknowledge, for those who are, those who are just like, no, I don't feel like we're winning, or I don't feel like there's actually any hope, or I don't feel like I am actually succeeding, or that I am abundant, or any of these other things. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not getting trapped there. And what we're going to find in the reading that I found was actually really insightful and helpful is that this is the type of dynamic that forces you, not just you, but me too. It forces us into a incredibly deep state. That's a terrible pun. But if you know what I mean, like it forces us, it really sets the stage for a very deep inner journey that you're not going to find your answers outside of yourself. And I think that if you're being realistic with how you're feeling and you're not judging yourself and you're allowing yourself to go into the full experience, right? Of what it means for all of us to be here and where we're all going together, there is something very important to learn here. So, let's let's get into the reading so that we can see some light at the end of the tunnel, I guess. Or the light at the end of the tunnel is kind of a trap, but because we're going into the black hole, right? And popping out the other side. There's no getting around that. So we can kind of bury our heads in the sand about it, or we can be very realistic about where we're headed so that we understand that there is a lot of baggage that we can't take with us. And just because you're feeling it, right? I mean, it's like a car accident. You can't turn away, but at the same time, it's kind of horrifying to watch other people. And part of that is being, and part of that is, like I said, intentionally created, but those people are real people and they're going through real experiences and they're suffering as a result of those experiences. And to turn away from that and pretend that everything is going to be okay is really, and that's why I posted that video from Lori, because she's doing the same work that I am, and many of us are. And I find that the people that are really the most authentic and transparent are the ones that are being very realistic about what's coming down the pipeline. Okay. And trying not to trigger people. And they say it all the time. I'm not trying to trigger people. I'm not trying to be doom and gloom, but we're not getting out of this anytime soon. That's exactly what Lori said, and it's exactly how I feel. And that became very clear to me over the weekend and upon waking this morning. I'm just like, we are going to be pushed to our limits. So if you're feeling it right now, that's a good sign, because you're not going to be shocked when you get into a state where you're like, wait a minute, I thought everything was going to be fine. And it is ultimately, right? I mean, that's outside of time and space. It is fine. So you find the ways that are going to work for you. You find the ways to lift that, that little rain cloud that may be following you around. I know it's following me around. That's for sure. And I stopped beating myself up about this a long time ago. Not that long ago, actually. I started accepting it's okay. And you don't have to identify yourself with these feelings. And that's like true mastery right there. You don't have to identify yourself with those feelings, but those feelings are pointing you to something really important, right? And so to push them aside is really, it's not, you're pretty much, to push them aside, you're not really acknowledging the full range of your potential when you do have uncomfortable feelings. So let's look at the reading. I'm just going on I'm just going on for no reason. I mean, there is a reason, but I'm not trying to vent. This isn't really about me. This is about using all of our experiences to share with each other so that we can come to a much more, you know, bonded, reality. That's the thing. There's no getting around that. Like, we're all going into this together. Where we go one, we go all is truly what we are dealing with here. And that means that no one gets left behind in the full energetic experience of all of this. It's really easy to just, turn it around on other people and be like, well, you're just creating this reality for yourself. And yes, that's very much true. We're all doing this together, but I don't know, sometimes you just have to be able to hold space for yourself in what's happening, and not to get caught up in it, but really acknowledge it and be like, there's something here that's important for me to acknowledge and hold space for. So, all right, number one here, a causal factor. Here's our 8 of Swords, interference, and it's reversed as well. So we already know that the interference is kind of like that, Jupiter in Gemini is like this endless analyzing, this constant, larger than life Jupiter is just expanding and expanding and expanding, with Gemini that is an endless stream of information. Like there's no definitive moment with Gemini because it's mutable air. It's just the full range of discoverable experiences, discoverable concepts and ideas, and it's the full range of our nervous system is Gemini. And so with Jupiter at the 8 of Swords, right, it's endless, right? And we get into the last 3 cards of the Swords is so, you got interference, you got cruelty, and then you got ruin, right? Because it shows that eventually there's no ceiling to the Gemini or the range of what we could experience or discover or explore. But that also means that we never do actually make a decision about anything. This is just Gemini in general. So when you have Jupiter, that's like, just expanding the space, right? It's just all gas. It's all hot air with Jupiter. It's never any details. There's just endless details that just go on and on forever. So at least when it's upright, there's the potential to realize that and be like, whoa, okay, like there's just this there's so much interference. Now, this is reversed. Now, tell me if this makes sense to anybody else, or is it just me? Compulsive brooding, right? Aimless pondering. I haven't really been compulsively brooding, but Scorpio is definitely a brooding sign. Aimless pondering, confusion, uncontrolled and unproductive thoughts, right? When we start getting into that feedback loop. So this is coming in, right? And there was a CME hit over the weekend, right? And it wasn't as, it was pretty minor considering how much, press it was getting. But then we got another X-class solar flare right after it. So the sun is waking up and the sun is giving us information. And so as we are bombarded with more information, as we are being impacted by more light, we have to also contend with its opposite, which is the space in which that light is occupying. It makes it, and the information, right? Information. So, but coming into this, uncontrolled and unproductive thoughts, right? It could just be swirling around. There's confusion, there's brooding, it's compulsive. There's just this card really especially in its reversal, there's just no calming this, right? It's just like this chewing on these ideas over and over, and there's never an end or a boundary to them. It's just like you just keep going through with your anxiety. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, right? There's never any kind of grounding necessarily. So when we move into the current moment here, again, the 7 of discs, this has come up before, and again, it's reversed. And this is, these are two cards together that are just like, damn, disappoint when it's reversed, especially the Seven of Discs is failure, right? Saturn in Taurus. Like there is a definitive, time and place for everything, especially in the physical world. So when it's reversed like this, we're not really learning very much, are we? And it's a disappointment, it's uneasiness, we're being hasty, we're doing stupid things, making unwise investments, right? Based on what? Based on this over analytical perspective or action. Our minds are just going and going and going. There doesn't seem to be any type of boundary to it. It's just an endless expansion of ideas and concepts. And then we get to this point that is just like, is there anything to actually show for this, right? And this would suggest no. That there is nothing to show for that type of energy. So, and we all are here at some point or another. These are all normal parts of the human experience. This is why they are part of the tarot in general, is that they all represent parts of the human journey. So disappointment, uneasiness, very uneasy. I'm feeling very uneasy. Stupid actions. That's a funny phrase, but, when it's just this endless brooding and compulsive, like thinking, we really can just like act stupidly or very unwisely. So it's already a place where we're feeling kind of like a failure, but then we, act on our disappointment and our uneasiness in very unwise ways rather than, realizing, I guess, that we are actually compulsively brooding over something that isn't getting us anywhere. But this is showing that there is, in fact, that we haven't gotten anywhere, that we're kind of in this position of like, like, what is happening here? Are we even getting anywhere? And I would argue that the compulsive brooding, the overanalysis, like the constant repetition of going into the mental space, all of those things are I would argue that they have got us nowhere, right? And it's, again, it comes back down to our bonds with each other, not who's doing what and what, there's a lot going on in that realm as well. And of course it's November, so you're talking about election time as well, local elections and things like that. So I just, I know I can relate to this, and, we're really sitting at a point right now, this nexus point between what's out there and what's in our hearts, being kind of like, what the fuck is going on here? And it's not a reflection of you doing something wrong. I promise, that it's, of course, we have to be aware of where our vibration is, because that is, in fact, what's going to attract to us a match, right? What resonates. But it's not because you're somehow like doing it wrong. It's because like we've all been in this place of endless analyzing, endless rabbit holes, going into, just going into the information just constantly. And now we're here and like, well, what has that done? What has it done? That, truth and knowledge are important, but it's really our relationships and the way we treat each other that really makes a difference. So it doesn't matter how much information or knowledge that we know, if we're not treating each other as if we are family, if we're not actually getting into the truth of our relationships with each other and what we produce as a society, then yeah, it's gonna feel like we're not getting anywhere. And I think that is really, for me, that's what's coming forward with this, is that, all of those things were really important for getting to a point of awakening. And there's so much more. Like there'll never not be knowledge to accumulate or to interact with, ever. But you eventually have to like move into a decision, or put yourself into some sort of bond, or acknowledge that the power comes from the connection with each other rather than the information that's coming in. That's not what actually binds us together. Gemini in the third house is not what binds us together. It's Cancer in the fourth house. So anyway, I know I'm spending a lot of time here, but it's important, because I think that it's very easy to get caught up otherwise in I find that it's easy to get caught up in feeling kind of negative about what's going on, and getting caught in a trap. So what we do see, though, as we are where we are grounded, sorry guys, I need to plug in my laptop. I was like, why? Okay. Here we go. So where we do see ourselves here, this is really good, actually. So this is the Five of Forces, and I have it reversed because it's reversed in the reading. So at the top, it's the winter. So it's the difference between the spring and the winter, summer and the winter, the solstice points. And so the winter time is the time of, it's a yin cycle. And in the Northern Hemisphere, this is, we're technically in fall, but this is where we're leading up to. But it also does represent that we're in a yin cycle, that we're in a period of receptivity, going inward, taking stock. This is where we draw our power from, okay? Is that it's going inward. And this is what Scorpio time really brings forward for us. It's time to really go inward and to be very mindful and aware of what we're producing together. And what are the bonds that unite us, right? That's really a big point of the Scorpio archetype. So where we're drawing our power, have the potential to draw our power right now, is in this yin cycle, receptivity, going inward. And I mean, this new moon in Scorpio time will officially kick off on this new moon, and we will be going into the underworld to start connecting some dots, and we will have to do it from the inside, right? It's not going to happen outside of us, and it's certainly not going to happen just in our minds. This is going to be something way more intuitive. It's going to be way more on the inner space. There's going to be way more depth involved in it. So where we can draw our power right now is in this time. Like, take the opportunity to just turn off all of those aspects and really go deeply within yourself and come to acknowledge and find your own answers by going within. And it's okay if what you come to is it's okay. It's okay. This is like, because it's winter, it's silent, right? Everything is stripped down to its basic elements. Everything is covered in snow, right? Everything is hibernating, and you can see the church and the steeple in the background. So there is something here that we can align with, or at least give us a sense of hope. And like I said, it's really easy to have gratitude and to find that joy and optimism when everything is going great in your life. But when you are really struggling, that is the real test. That is real mastery. When you can hold space for yourself and other people as they are going through some really difficult things, and then be able to still have gratitude for your life, for those experiences. And this is really saying that there is hope, right? That there's something to focus on even in this receptivity that will come back around later, or at some other time will be much more of an outward manifestation. You know what I mean? That's the thing about time. It's cyclical. It's a cycle. And so even in those dark moments, even in those times of silence or receptivity or having to go inward, it's not like that forever. But it's like that right now. I do feel like that's like that right now. And that's where we can really draw our power. Now, when it comes to where our attention is and where we can release this power, I mean, again, I certainly am not feeling this way. Queen of Forces. I don't feel a peaceful balance between creativity and receptivity. Like, I feel very unbalanced. So we can embody this or identify ourselves with this particular figure and what she represents, which is balancing our creativity, the sun in Scorpio and the moon right now in Virgo into Libra, and balancing those aspects even when the new moon comes, being able to balance the sun in Scorpio and the moon in Scorpio, right? Our creativity and our receptivity, both in a sign that has us in, sinking to down into the abyss to really see what's down there. Oh, if you've ever seen the movie the Abyss. Oh, I love that movie. Total, that's full of disclosure. My gosh. I love that movie, The Abyss. It's really, really good. James Cameron, I believe it was James Cameron that made that movie. So I think that there's something here that it's about finding balance. It's about being this person specifically that we can really put our attention onto, is finding a way to be this person, to balance these two forces within our lives that have to do with the outward and external, and then the inward and the internal experience. Okay, because where is this headed? Well, here's our moon in Scorpio right here, which is the high priestess. So even with all of the discomfort, even with all of the kind of compulsive brooding and the idea that we're just really disappointed, where is this getting us? Where is our red October, right? And then there are lots of things that are happening. There surely are lots of things that are happening. You can just point to your own life, I'm sure, and be like, yeah, there's actual things happening. But this is showing us that we're about to embark on a inner journey, a very substantial inner journey. And it's about desire to find our inner source with the high priestess, intuitive knowledge, inner wisdom at its deepest, and a certain amount of patience. And the moon in Virgo all weekend and coming out of Virgo today is, that was a big part of it, the patience that we could bring forward in terms of our emotions and our receptivity as in the moon, right? To be able to be patient, right? So a good example of this and the sun and Saturn were a big part of this, the tension. So I'm going to give you an example how this played out, because it just comes out so perfectly. So my dad has finally moved into the inpatient rehab center at the hospital that he has been at. This is really good news. They've taken him off all of his monitors, right? He's walking around on his own. I mean, if he was really struggling to even walk around and get up on his own, he was so weak because he'd been bedridden for weeks and weeks and weeks. So now things are moving in that direction. But before that happened, they had a bed for him, but they were waiting for the insurance. And so they gave the bed away and he freaked out, right? Friday night, all hell broke loose and he's threatening to leave. And he's like, I'm leaving. And then of course the hospital, their response is to be like, well, we'll get the patient advocate and the caseworker involved, because they insisted that he stay like he was a prisoner or something. And I was like, oh, that's going to make him feel better, bringing more people in to try to pressure him when he's a customer, right? That's the thing about you want a for-profit medical system like we have, then, people are customers, they're not prisoners. But I knew that if he was just patient, right? So there's the sun and Saturn, coming to square each other. And I was like, just chill. And I was just like, slow your roll. I was like, if they don't have a bed for you by Monday, then reapproach it and tell them you're leaving and they're going to a different rehab center, because you want to start getting stronger, right? You're at that point now. And he wasn't going to listen to anybody else, but I told him, I was just like, just chill. I was like, I bet they have a bed for you this weekend. So yesterday he texted me and he's like, I'm going to rehab today. So it's all good, but that patience, right? I was just like, just have some patience, trust the process right now. You've been there for weeks. What's another 2 days? It's okay. And that seemed to be a really strong theme that is now coming back around. It's just, the patience that is required to go into these very deep places in order to gather a wisdom that is not coming from outside of us. It is coming directly from our inner source and our intuitive knowledge. And this new moon cycle, yes, there's going to be a lot of things that change over. Now Mars is in Scorpio. Venus is at the galactic center today. She's going to move into Capricorn as well. There's going to be a big shifting. And I do believe that as a result of that, we are going to have to exercise some more patience while we go into some very deep places. because you can't connect dots that you haven't connected before without giving yourself the chance to go into a deeper wisdom, right? I mean, if you're trying to do things in the same way that you've been doing them, right? That whole concept of insanity, right? Doing the same thing and expecting a different result. It's going to be time that we are willing. It's going to be time where we are being invited to go deeper and to try things that are new and make different connections than we have before, in order to really understand what it is that we are capable of producing together. And there's a deep amount of productivity and a desire to be productive with Scorpio, especially where this new moon is, because it's getting to the changeover from the first half of Scorpio into the second half, which is communion into faith. And faith doesn't come from outside. Faith doesn't come from, it doesn't come from outside. It comes from within. And sometimes there's an incredible amount of patience that we have to exercise in order to see the results of something that maybe they're not coming quick enough. And I think that we're going to really need this faith as we embark on the end of 2021. So, and the high priestess, there can be fear, right? There can be fear with the high priestess and darkness, because again, you have to go into that space in order to, there has to be some space for light to fill, right? And so we're gonna go into these spaces. And this is a big part of the new moon, I think. So at least in my opinion. So let's move on to the guidance, because this is going to help, I think, a lot. So first we have the Oracle of Delphi reversed, right? Which is, again, denying the inner voice. And so going into the yin or receptive aspect of ourselves, right? Drawing our power from a force that has us contracting and going within and being silent is really going to help, in the sense that if we are denying the inner voice, if it's distorted in any way, right? If we're not getting the full interpretation of what we are picking up or perceiving, again, going into the silence, into the inner spaces is really going to help with this process of our inner voice that's really trying to speak more to us than anything that is bombarding us, right? We are like in the middle of a Pong game with these two factions that are desperately trying to have control over an outcome that ultimately they can't even have control over. So it's all hubris as far as I can tell. And so the only real authority we should be relying on is our own inner voice. And it's really being distorted right now. And the best way to get away from that is to, in fact, go into that deeper inner space. That is so much part of what's this reading seems to be about. And the octopus along with that, there is something about, that's not it. Camouflage, shape-shifting. I mean, this card says practice shape-shifting by altering your physical appearance and mannerisms. And yes, I would say that too. But there's something about camouflage. There's something about, your outside reflects the inside, right? Octopi will change, their color shifts on their skin based on how they feel, right? Like what they're experiencing. And so you can kind of tell how they're feeling based on the skin color or the shade of the skin on the outside. So that's also part of the shapeshifting. And then if you've ever watched an octopus in action, right, they can fit themselves into any hole. You know what I mean? They can really, they're very, adept at being flexible, right? So there's a flexibility, there's a sense of camouflage, there's a sense of shape-shifting, right? That it's this amorphous type of character. And I would part of the shape-shifting, again, is obviously being flexible and camouflaging oneself, but I also would say turning yourself inside out, right? There's one thing, but also too, again, putting yourself in other people's shoes. That's a big part of this too. If you're going to literally physically change or alter your mannerisms and your appearance, you have to actually be able to identify with that you're changing into, right? You have to be able to feel into that resonance. You have to bring it into your own. So again, there's something here about the shape shifting and camouflage and being flexible and being able to kind of go into these spaces and not and turn your attention inward. And maybe camouflage is something that's really important right now, because it's very easy, again, like I said, to just be picking up on the literal signals that are like we're being bombarded with. Like if you have Wi-Fi in your house, if you sleep with your phone by your head, I mean, we are literally being bombarded with signals that will impact our thinking. And the interference pattern is very real. And so if you not even sure that you have your own thoughts right now, again, this is really important to look into or to consider. And again, you have to go deep within yourself to really know if this is how I think and feel or not. So again, the octopus, there's a lot of different aspects that go along with this, but there's something very important about the camouflage and being able to literally shift our mannerisms and appearance. And maybe we do need to hide a little bit, like hide under the snow, right? Hide in plain sight, but blended in with the environment so that we are not being bombarded or having an inner voice that's not actually ours, because that says a lot about this interference, and then a very strong connection to failure or a sense of like disappointment or just like, what are we doing? Because if you aren't aware of these things within yourself, this is the perfect set of conditions in order to manipulate people as well. So that's something to consider. And speaking of whom do you serve? That's the dog. Your loyalty and faithfulness is misplaced by serving too many masters. And so again, we have to bring it all back into the center here of ourselves, balancing these two poles of ourselves, of the creativity and the receptivity. And, for me, I can say that it's been nonstop. And this is a big part of what this new moon cycle that we're still in, right? The moon is now getting into her balsamic phase. It's like that little thumbnail sliver now. So we don't get a full illumination of how we feel, what's going on in that realm. It's coming darker and less accessible. And so it makes it harder it just makes it more difficult to be aware of what may be operating under the surface that's influencing the rest of your behavior and your thought patterns and things like that. So again, who is your loyalty and faithfulness being put into? Is it putting into our own ability to balance ourselves out so that we can be full human beings in this moment? Are we spread too thin with other people? Are we giving our power away to others who are telling us what to do or think, or telling us this is what is? These are all really good questions, but I would say that the reason it's coming up is because it does impact our ability to be very masterful over our own internal forces. And the Seven of Roses is reversed as well, which I think is really interesting. But it's saying that, the journey is delayed or it's canceled, right? We've talked about this card before, where we got to get on the boat and go into the new territory, and it's scary. And sometimes you have to leave behind what is comfortable. But this is suggesting that, to be patient and attend to what is right in front of you, rather than getting caught up in all of the outside in interference, all of the outside intrusion that is attempting to have an impact on all of our feelings and resonance. And so even if we are not necessarily struggling with anything in particular in our lives, look at how easily we can get thrown off when we are faced with that those experiences outside of us coming in through certain types of channels, right? So various social media things, right? Staying up to date with what's happening in the rest of the world, listening to other people and reading social media and all of those things. Like we have to be patient and deal with what's right in front of us again, so that we can have a sense of agency about our lives, number one. And number two, then we can get into the heart of the truth for ourselves, rather than, again, being caught up in what we identify, or what is being we're being bombarded with this interference. It's really, really strong. And I certainly am being realistic about how I feel and like everything that's kind of come through in the, and it's not just intentionally, and this is part of it, right? This is definitely part of it, where it's being intentionally put into our field in different ways. There's so many different technologies that do this, that it would be, I would say, be foolish not to at least consider the possibility that not all of your thoughts are your own, and how they relate to how you feel. But again, that's why it's so important to go within, so you know the difference between how you feel and what truth is, what it feels like within you, and what is being pushed into your field, so that you bring about a response that will create institutions down the road. That's the thing about Scorpio. You can't get around how the fact that when you come together, you create something. There is a production that happens, and that's it's very important that we're realizing this, because everybody is impacting the field now equally. And so be patient, do what's, just attend to what's right in front of you, because that's probably the most impact that you're actually going to have. And that could be simply as it could be just as simple as just being present for other people, like trying to, holding a vibe of authenticity, and being realistic with yourself, but also being kind and compassionate to other people. And, the more you help other people, the more it usually helps you when you're feeling kind of down, or you're having, a struggle with what's going on for you. It usually does help to help other people or be of service. So that's, with the moon coming out of Virgo today, that's, we can feel how we can be of service. We can utilize our intuition and our own feelings and receptivity in some ways to be of service. But be patient, attend to what's right in front of you. You can't do anything about what's happening outside in the world. You can attend to what's right in front of you. And I think that there's something to be said for that right now, because I think we want to all kind of get somewhere, and we're all getting somewhere together, but it may not be happening on the timeline that we want, or perhaps it's not enough necessarily if each of us is like successful, if the rest are, I don't know, if they're not. This is a very difficult position to be in. I'm not exactly sure even how to necessarily make sense of a lot of this right now, because like the veil is thin, right? The veil is thin right now, and everybody's having different experiences right now. And sometimes it's really difficult to make sense of how everything, to make sense of it when there's a lot of conflicting and interfering information. And it can really lead us feeling very depressed or down. And I think that it's okay, right? Because as long as you don't get lost there, but you take it as an opportunity to really go deep and find where, where your core is. I think that's a very useful thing. But this really does suggest that we're not going anywhere anytime soon. Like, we're in this for the long haul, right? And so it's best to focus on what's right in front of you, because if we were doing that to begin with, like really focusing on what's right in front of us, who's responsible for your local community, where is your food coming from, what is the quality of your relationships, and how are you having an impact on that in your immediate environment? These are all things that we can focus on and actually have some control over, and not spreading ourselves so thin. And I know that's been really hard with this particular month, because that's been a lot of the training that has been brought forward, is spreading a lot of us very thin so that we can practice holding the space for a large area, basically, and maintaining that level balance in our social context, whatever it is. So let's look at the astrology, and then I'll stop, because this is just, oh boy. And sometimes it's hard to see things that, there's the Schumann. I'm not going to talk about the Schumann today. Let's just get into the chart. There is something in terms of fixed star astrology that I want to bring up. So we'll talk about that, because I think what I was going to say is that sometimes it's really hard to see things that other people don't see, and to have a very sharp vision of what's going on, either within you or outside of you, that other people don't see. And more people's eyes are opening every day, and you can see that and you can feel it, but there always is a boomerang effect to that. And also too, let's just get into it, because what we're going to find here is that we have Venus at the galactic center today, and that's going to have an impact on, and normally that's like this, Venus at the galactic center, right? Like bringing in all of this beautiful galactic energy, like the galactic mission. And for starseeds, I mean, this is primary. Like, this is where it's at with the galactic center of the galaxy, 26 degrees Sagittarius. So, but again, Venus, it really depends on what paradigm you've been operating under, that has really determined how you have been sensitive to the world around you and the value you've placed on that. And so it really does depend on what collective paradigm you're operating under in terms of Venus. So let's look here at all these major transits. Number one, so right as the day turned over, where we found that Mercury in conjunction with Spica was in a trine to Jupiter. And so this is not the first time this has happened. This has already happened twice before because of Mercury's retrograde, because it's still not out of shadow. That's something that's really important to consider, that we're not in new territory for Mercury at this point. It's still going over old territory, something that it's already gone over in a prograde and in a retrograde, and has made the same connection to Jupiter, except this time Jupiter is direct, right? So now Jupiter is sending lightning bolts all over the place in order to give us every opportunity to use that as like a training simulation in order to really be able to hold and master the full range of the collective energy, the natural collective energy of humanity, right? The human collective. That's really what Aquarius represents, is the larger collection of life in general. And so now that Jupiter is direct in this realm, all of the resources have been directed there. Jupiter certainly supports whatever supports you, as long as you're on the same team, right? There's no details necessarily. But one thing about Jupiter in Aquarius, and we've talked about this before, is that it's the lightning bolt, right? It's that singular point of energy that is focused throughout the collective, that is the gnosis, right? It is that third eye opening and the full range of knowledge of the connection of everything else, that we are all one, right? That everything in the universe comes from a singular source. But in Aquarius, it is that laser focus of it. And so this is supposed to be a great transit, right? Spica is giving all of the resources and sharing what sustains and nourishes us, and there's a sense of really strong fortune, and that's the case with Jupiter as well, in terms of where we're going, right? The new beginning. And so the thing, there's, as long as we're focused, I would say, in our minds, and Mercury is the mind and Jupiter is the higher mind, the understanding, right? The big picture. And so these two are working together when they are, at their best in this air trine, when we're acknowledging the creation of a new day, when we're heralding the new dawn, right, in our own mind, in our own conceptualization of the world around us, and applying that to something in terms of balance and harmony, right? Because we don't necessarily create anything new. It's really just a recognition, just kind of like the rooster crowing doesn't make the sun rise. It's a recognition of the cycle coming back around. And what is it that's new, I think, is a really good question. And what is it that we are all mentally kind of coming to terms with, and as the cycle turns over, as it always does? I think that's a really good question, to see how you're getting what this really represented. This trine between these two, because this is a lot. I mean, it's an air trine, and then you have two planets that have to do with, one has to do with the higher mind and understanding, which is action oriented, and then Mercury is the function of the mind. So what is coming up new, right, it is what it is. And the dawn of a new day, we herald the new day in our mind, right? It's the beginning of November. And so this is very much finding support and traction with all of the training simulation that is going on, that Jupiter is like, here, everything around you is an opportunity to train, right? Is an opportunity to get better at handling the intensity of the energy coming in and coming in and coming in from the sun, from the impact of everybody's actions, right? We're still talking about Aquarius, so it's the full range of knowing that we're all one together, and that means that we all impact each other. So this is a very good transit. This trine between Mercury and Jupiter. So it's opening some doors. It's really opening some doors. But what is it opening doors into? That there will be more opportunities to train, right? There are going to be more situations that kind of force us into disciplining ourselves within the full collective, and what that feels like and what that means. So I think this is I'm having a hard time. I'm going to be honest. I'm having a hard time being able to, energetically connect to this transit, because of the entire experience of what I'm feeling right now. So I kind of want to sit on this because, and not to say that there isn't anything there to reflect on. It's just that. See, this is what happens. This is a great opportunity to show how easily you can get caught up with the interference and not actually be able to intuit correctly, or without the veil of these other imposed types of experiences or feelings and thoughts, because trying to have a positive outlook right now with what this means is really a struggle. And that's okay. It's okay to feel this way. And I'm not saying that to just convince myself. I'm really saying it to let other people know that it's okay to feel this way. Just because it's a trine doesn't mean it's good. It just means that you don't have to do anything to have the balance between these two archetypal references. And so there's plenty more opportunities to discipline ourselves and to handle the full, I mean, you're talking about full third eye opening, right? You're talking about the full gnosis of what it means to be. That's Aquarius. And the social context as an organism in and of itself, that is also Aquarius. So, these two are really coming together, and I'm not really sure how to trying to find how this really fits into where I'm actually feeling right now is because it's eighth house. It's eighth house. It's first house for me, right? It's the darkness of the relationships, the productivity of our relationships versus like this expansion of my actual personality, like who I am as a person. This is just an example to show. So I don't know what else to say about it. So I'm just going to be very raw, and it feels very uncomfortable right now to be so authentic and raw about it, because people come to this channel to get a sense of insight into what's going on, and to be kind of like, I'm just a human being as well, is really uncomfortable. It's a struggle right now. Like, I'm ready to turn off the stream because I'm just like, I can't. But I'm going to keep going, right? Because that's what we do. Sometimes you just have to show up, even if you don't feel like that you have the means to keep it together. So let's see. We'll move on here. So the next thing, our moon in Virgo this morning. Look at this, opposite a Neptune. So right there, is Neptune is just like, here, I'm going to dissolve everything down. There's actually nothing that you can attach to other than your own kind of like purified, naive trust and hope for the future, right? And it's retrograde, so we are internalizing a lot of this. Thankfully, the fog is still pretty minimal, so we're getting a very clear experience of this. And the thing about Neptune and Pisces is that it's inseparable from everything else. Like, we're still feeling into everything else. And so the challenge here is, how do we train ourselves? How do we participate? How do we direct our emotions and our feelings into a situation that's having us, train ourselves to become better at being part of a team, to be a really good team player, in order to pick up the slack for our own training, so that when we come together as a team, for instance, that everybody is operating at their highest level. This is where the moon is in opposition to Neptune. It's just like, there's nothing, there's no team, there's no competition. There's no boundaries. There is no self here. There's no sides, nothing. It is just down to the very base level of experience. And all we have to go on is, here, trust what's going to happen, even though you're being bombarded with every possible scenario, every possible piece of information, every signal you're being bombarded with. It's all here in Pisces, and Neptune is just making it more so, right? And it's all happening on this internal level. When Neptune stations direct on December 1st, a month from now, the fog will be very thick, right? And Neptune moving direct is going to be like, okay, I may have been kind of, dissolving everything within you, so you find this place within you, but then it's going to be like, and I'm going to just dissolve everything outside of you. So if you're not doing this work now, by December, when Neptune really starts to move forward, it's going to be so confusing, and and we're already confused. It's going to get so much more so. And so the challenge with this opposition is like, how do we stay in that flow and surrender to it, while at the same time, each of us is trying to maintain some measure of, individuality and a sense of self in the face of everybody else. So that allows us to take some responsibility for ourselves, right? To actually do some work on ourselves, to put things where they belong emotionally, right? Be the best version of ourselves, so that when we do come together, we are, everybody's operating at their highest capacity. There is no high capacity. There's no team. There's no nothing with Neptune and Pisces. And that's what it feels like on the inside. It's just like, there isn't even a reality here. This is just a stream of consciousness. This is just base experience. And I'm somehow supposed to, just have some hope that it's all going to be okay, right? This is like Pandora's box open and just being like, okay, within ourselves. So it's important that we take heed of this now. And I'm speaking to myself as well, because this is, it's really hard to, keep on it right now when you're just like, none of this is even real. Right? How can I even believe that any of this is real at this point? And I would argue that a lot of it is being outside of us, is being curated. It's controlled demolition, right? And we don't even have access at all to what actually is going on. And the only way we're really going to get that is when we go within and find it through our own internal intuitive channels. It's not going to come from outside of us. And like I said, when Neptune stations direct, it's going to be so much harder. So this is the time right now to really be working with this. Now, Vesta, here is the moon in a sextile to Vesta over here. Now, you remember when Venus was at 22 degrees Scorpio, that was that release valve, right? Where it was a socially acceptable release valve for our aggressive instincts. Well, this is where Vesta is right now. And so, in order for us to maintain a sense of spiritual sustainment, right? The eternal flame within us, we have to allow for some sort of something. We have to allow for some sort of the release valve. We have to allow for something in that is going to keep us from blasting apart or being extinguished entirely. That's the other thing. If we don't have an outlet for this energy right now, I feel like that it could easily extinguish our fire, right? The depression and the hopelessness and the feeling of disappointment and failure, whatever, right? It could really, the waters of Scorpio, could really extinguish that internal fire, the aspect that holds, that sustains us, right? The eternal flame, the spark of our soul. There needs to be something. And the sextile here with the moon is this opportunity to reconcile the fact that there needs to be an outlet, but there also needs to be some type of coat of arms, right? There needs to be, we're stepping into a royal office, each of us individually with this moon in Virgo. We're stepping into the last phase of Virgo, the last decan, which is, really about the wealth that we accumulate. And that's not necessarily financial wealth. It's about the fruits of our labor, right? What does it bring forward? Well, we're starting to step into some sort of, designation that shows that we are worthy to step into the lineage of whatever. It's not just about us, but it's about stepping into a larger lineage in Virgo, something that we are part of that's bigger than just us. And so stepping into a designation, a coat of arms, right? A royal coat of arms. And, the breastplate is filled with all of these incredible stones. So it also shows that we have something within us that is, or outside of us, some sort of, it's not even protection. It's more of the ability to transfer that energy, to have all of these all of these minerals and gems and these precious stones that allow for this, that allow for us to bring in energy, transmute energy, block energy, depending on what we're trying to do. And it only comes with the mastery that's led us up to this point. So the sextile with Vesta, right? We need an outlet. We need an outlet that for this very raw feeling, so that we don't extinguish that part of ourselves in the process of just bleh, right? Just the emoting or whatever, or the aggression or the instinctual release. We need an outlet. And the outlet, I feel like, is going to be putting on the armor of God, essentially, like to make it real simple, whatever that is to you. And it's not just about you. It's about stepping into a role. It's stepping into a royal office or a noble office, you know, a lineage that you're part of, or that we're all part of, that we are now worthy of because we've done the work in Virgo, right? To get ourselves organized, to get ourselves, you know, to take that meticulous action around our emotions and our emotional hygiene, our energetic hygiene. There's something here that we can make this mutual investment in these things, so that we're not like totally burning ourselves out or burning ourselves down or destroying anybody else. That's the other thing about Scorpio. You are not separate from anybody else in Scorpio. That's the thing you can't ever get away from, is that everything you do impacts what you produce in your relationships when you're in a relationship. And we're all in a relationship with each other. So, but there's something here about stepping into this armor, right? Stepping into this coat of arms that is going to at least allow for a reconciliation of, and a protection, right? And a means to release, right? A means to release this. If we know that we have this protection that is more than just us, like we're stepping into a lineage of some sort and have the armor of God on, I think this will really help in this process, because otherwise we do run the risk of extinguishing that flame that's going to be so important moving forward. So important moving forward. The moon comes into a quincunx with Jupiter. So we had Mercury in this trine with Jupiter earlier, but now we have the moon in Virgo in a quincunx, right? Where we need to find that adjustment position, the transmutation that it represents. And Jupiter is all big all the time, bro. Like it is just, that's why Jupiter in Gemini is the 8 of Swords. Like there's just no boundary. Like Jupiter doesn't know the meaning of the word, like, you know, consolidate or downsize. Like forget that. Jupiter is just all big all the time, and it's just been, you know, it's just been a constant, the constant energy and certainly expansion, but really just the energy and the intensity of every single situation, training us to step into a very disciplined position within the human collective right now. So with the moon in Virgo in this quincunx, I mean, like, again, here's patience coming back up, the ability to tame our vital energies. There is no taming of Jupiter, right? Jupiter is larger than life. So just that in itself of taming our vital energies in order to fulfill our destiny, to be patient, right? To tame the beast, right? And to be able to utilize it appropriately and for service to ultimately the collective, but at least to start with ourselves. This is how do we adjust ourselves in this moment? How do we find patience and tame these vital energies and really master this Kundalini within us, and not just like have this expulsion of really intense energy and risk doing some real damage in the face of Jupiter that's just like, nah, like it's just, you know, there's no taming anything. It's just like one lightning bolt after the other, after the other, after the other. And just being like, there is no letting up with Jupiter ever, unless it's retrograde. Then it's a different story at that point. And that's what we had been experiencing with Jupiter in Aquarius. Now it's moving direct. And so it's just not letting up. So we're going to have to really put ourselves into I really, this moon in this quincunx is really pointing it out, how important it is that we find the way to transmute this energy, because it's very tempting and it's very easy not to have patience. It's very easy to let our energy just kind of explode all over the place, with Jupiter constantly keeping us from actually settling, right? It's just, again, one situation after the other, and it's all training, all of it. So how do we do that? I don't know. That's something we're going to have to figure out today. And then, because from there, the moon comes into a trine with Pluto, right? Pluto retrograde, or no, retrograde is now direct. And this degree, the flag at half mast, right? Something within us needs to be, this represents that when we fulfill our function or our role, or we come to really step into our fullest potential, ultimately we will be seen for that, and it will be acknowledged by the social order that we find ourselves in. But it's a total giving of ourselves and a full realization of what we are here to do. Again, trine Pluto, it's about the destruction, right? We are here to be part of the demolition, regardless of who's trying to control it and why. That's not, I mean, we could certainly fulfill that if we wanted to. But I would argue that this is way more about finding in this moment a sense of balance and a sense of harmony with each of us emotionally stepping up and actually fulfilling what we're here to do, and finding some harmony with the destruction at a institutional level that Pluto represents. So that's not really that hard to wrap our heads around. But remember, flag at half mast usually designates that somebody has passed away, and that the flag at half mast is a recognition from the culture that somebody has fulfilled their life in service to that culture, and the culture is recognizing it. So there's part of ourselves that we really are giving over intentionally and with full awareness to this process. And we don't have to really do much if we resist it. I think that's where we're going to have the most problems, I suppose. It's more about realizing that we're all here for this process, and we each have our own role to play, and we're here to fully engage with that role. And then the sun comes into a quincunx with Chiron. So right here, you can see that happening. And then Mars is now in Scorpio. So the intensity is really strong because of this now. Mars in Scorpio, the co-ruler of Scorpio, and is specifically in this quincunx with the North Node that'll happen exact tomorrow, where, again, we are keeping ourselves open in terms of our karmic trajectory at a soul level. Our souls are staying open to the blessings and staying open to receive the blessings and to receive that which we have embarked upon exploring and discovering in terms of concepts, ideas, knowledge. We're staying open to receive the blessings of that knowledge that we have embarked on discovering. But part of the discomfort here with this quincunx is that Mars is just like, okay, we're on the tour bus together, let's go, and then realizing everything you left behind, and having this really nostalgic moment because you're not going back. That, I think, says a lot about because Mars is it's the beginning, right? It's either the beginning of us, if we came from Mars, for instance, it's the beginning of our impulse to be. It's the beginning of the ego consciousness. It is the thrusting forward into life. It is the penetration into the soil of the medium of our growth, right? It is the seed point. And when you acknowledge that you're a seed with all the potential for the growth, you kind of, and when you come together, right? Because that's what we're talking about with Scorpio, is coming together. It's an ego death. And the second degree of Scorpio is a big part of this, and letting go of what has been and kind of surrendering to this nostalgic moment. These things don't seemingly fit together. So we have to find a way to make these fit together and transmute this energy. Again, this is a very difficult energy, all of this. And then the sun in a quincunx to Chiron, right? Chiron, that is, again, the giving of new symbolic reference to old images, and how much that's triggering all of us, of like, wait a minute, this used to mean something, and now it's like the perspective is wider. And I have the opportunity to actually look at it in a completely new way and have this symbol mean something completely different. But all it does is seem to bring up all of this victim or savior type of dynamic, or really challenge our ability to let go of an identity that's not even, it's not even relevant anymore. That's the thing about Chiron. He had to literally give up his life and his identity. He had to give up his identity as the wounded healer in order for him to heal himself. And so this quincunx here is we've come so far. And this identity is really connected to what we've all built together. A lot of us have built our identities around what is already institutionalized. And the sun here at 10 degrees Scorpio is really illuminating what it is that binds us and unites us together. And again, if we want to let go of these aspects of our identity, this is really difficult. These two quincunxes are really sticking out right now in terms of how palpable and how uncomfortable they really are. But they're providing incredible opportunities right now in order to look very directly at what it is we're letting go of and surrendering to and releasing ourselves from, and also too, like, what it is about what is binding us together, what is in fact institutionalized as a result of our collective production, and what do we need to let go of? What that we are still identifying with, does it have to mean the same thing anymore? Now, these are really difficult. And the more that I'm channeling this right now, the more it seems like this is kind of almost the apex here of where a lot of the discomfort is coming from, because there is just so much not fitting together in terms of where we're going at a soul level, right? And Black Moon Lilith is also retrograde in Gemini right now. And so there is a really strong self-preservation, a very deep drive to just kind of, shoot that arrow and just destroy, there's a lot of aggression in a lot of these, there's a lot of aggression, specifically in some of the feminine aspects of this chart today, because we're talking about Black Moon Lilith and we're talking about Vesta, asteroid Vesta. So I'm not surprised by any of this. So the moon then comes into a square with Venus. This is where we'll end, because Venus is at the galactic center, and to have this square here is very interesting. So a mutable square. So this degree of Virgo really speaks to almost the necessity of having some sort of refined tradition that we can ceremonially take part in, if that makes sense. There's something to be said with these court functions, right? And our role within them, whatever that means to you. I mean, this is just Sabian symbol activation, basically, but there's a lineage, right? There's a protocol that if we follow it, it doesn't mean that we're not our own selves. And it certainly doesn't mean that we're not being spontaneous, but there's something here about taming this energy, right? To consolidate it and to really master it. And like I said, when we fall, excuse me, into this protocol, that's provided as part of this lineage, it really kind of gives some more stability to the lineage that we're part of, whatever that is. I mean, you can think about it ancestrally, but you can also consider it in terms of the human lineage and, generational, human. You could even look at it in starseed, because now we're getting into galactic degrees right here, 26 degrees. So what is it that what's the protocol that allows us to kind of refine ourselves within? But again, this is, because Venus at the galactic center, right? So let's talk about this. The galactic center, the center of the Milky Way galaxy from Earth's perspective, right? The Sabian symbol is a sculptor at work. It's a self-projection of ourselves into a work, right? The sculptor. So you're taking yourself and your ideas and your vision and your creativity, and you're bringing it into a form. And this is what alchemy certainly represents. And the late degrees of Sagittarius, right? It's getting closer to Capricorn. So it's showing that the cohesiveness of understanding and the synthesis of our understanding can finally be brought together and actually create something physical. Capricorn, right? The unfolding of the physical natural matrix. And it is Sagittarius, which is the friction of opposing forces that create something new. And so, Venus, we're very sensitive to this right now, right? We are all feeling like we want to bring our vision forward into a form. But Venus is about our own comfortability, and she represents our sensitivity to the material world around us and our value and who and what we value. So the relationships in our lives have value to us. Our resources have value to us. The projects that we work on have value to us. These are all very palpable things that have value to us. This is what Venus pulls towards her. This is what this represents, our ability to attract or magnetize towards us that which appeals to our senses and allows us to acknowledge what is valuable and feel and be secure and comfortable with having what is valuable to us. And so this is directly connected to a specific fixed star that I want to share with you, because this is where it gets, this is where I think we are really potentially struggling right now. So at least that's where, this is very connected to my personal chart. So maybe that's why. Let's see here. What I want to show you is, this is a star called Aculeus. And it's right here. It's actually a cluster of stars in the Scorpio constellation. So it's in the zodiacal sign of Sagittarius in relation to the galactic center. But if you were to look at the constellations, this is where this would be, Aculeus, right above the Stinger. And it's a collection of stars, right? It's a collection of stars. It is a star cluster, right? So it doesn't have the best, which is interesting because it is at the center of the galaxy. It doesn't have the best reputation. It actually has a reputation in terms of ancient astrology and fixed star astrology. It has a pretty notorious reputation for being one of the blind stars. So having eyesight problems. It's about having vision issues, right? So it can be ominous if you're reading, like, in terms of, you're trying to read a person's chart and they have this in their chart and you're trying to predict things, or look at mundane astrology and like timing of things. And also too, what to expect, if people have this in their chart in particular, the blind star, not being able to see, and not being able, or to have some kind of damage in your vision, right? Or to not see what is there. So, but apart from that, especially because it is very negative in terms of the astrological connection. and there's a tendency towards a very morbid outlook, right? I mean, that seems very counterintuitive to what we want to believe about the galactic center and the receiving of the galactic mission in our charts and just in general. And Venus, it makes it something that we're very sensitive to. Very sensitive, right? It's in our material reality that we feel into and that we use our five senses to connect with. So there is a tendency towards a morbid outlook here, despite the fact that this is about bringing our own self-projecting into a work or a form. And seeing the worst in everything, that's another part of this star, and to have like a very fierce religious perspective on one side or the other. But at its best, and I'd say that Venus, because of the sensitivity that she represents, I mean, it's really, where is your value? Where does your value lie? So at its best, and if it's well aspected, this is about having a very sharp mind and perception well above average, and perhaps blind to what we see and take for granted. So for the average person to not see or to be blind to or to take for granted when this is really well aspected in your chart, there's a tendency to see what other people don't see. So now you can kind of come to understand that, and it's in the constellation of Scorpio, which again is where the sun is, Vesta is, Mars is. We're dealing with the truth of situations, the feeling-based truth, right? The truth that you don't get around. This is what we create together is in Scorpio. What we produce together is, started in Scorpio. The drive and the hunger and the desire to merge or the desire to get deeper, to understand the underlying aspects. This is what we produce together. There's no getting away from this. So no matter what, we are bound to each other. And the quality of that binding is really what's important today. Because no matter what, it's going to be the bond that awakens us to what we are here to do and what we are creating with each other. So this particular connection here with Venus, especially because it's in a square to the moon, if we go back to that, right, here's that square to the moon, the Virgo moon at the last degrees of Virgo. So while we may either see or not see, right? Remember, Venus is about being comfortable, and you're talking about a sense that is beyond just your five senses. This is not something that Venus is actually, if we're looking at it archetypally, is not really able to do very well, because she is way more connected to the sensitivity to the world around her. But also too, we want to bring ourselves out into form, right? We want to project ourselves out into form. We want to create something that is a visual and physical representation of our vision. Whereas the moon in Virgo is just like the best way to discipline yourself at this point is to follow this protocol that's been laid down time after time after time in order for you to really embody the full lineage of what you have committed yourself to be part of, right? That's the other thing about Virgo. It's devoted. It's disciplined, right? It's about hygiene and purification. And something about these protocols, something about these ceremonial, in Japan, for instance, a lot of Eastern cultures, but Japan is a really good example of this. They follow very strict procedures when they do anything ceremonially, right? It's very important that you follow the procedure. And we are really trying to birth something new, right? And Venus is like, I can feel it. I'm sensitive to it. There's so much value in bringing this forward, but it just, what is it? What is it that we're seeing? And what is it that maybe we're taking for granted? What is it that other people are taking for granted that they're not fully seeing? There's something here that even though this is really uncomfortable, there's something here about this moon in Virgo at the very last, like, couple degrees of Virgo, that if we allow ourselves internally and intuitively to follow these procedures or the very specific protocol of these some sort of ceremonial connection, whatever it is for you, I feel like that this is, as uncomfortable as it's going to seem, I think that we will get something out of this that will really help when we are working with the transmutation along these lines with Mars and the North Node and then the Sun in Chiron, because this is, it's really uncomfortable right here. And maybe you are not feeling the discomfort and you're like, man, this is just what, this is, there's nowhere to go but up, everything is like working out for me. I'm getting all of the things that I want. There's tons of evidence that it's all looking up. So that could very well be your experience. But what I'm looking at right now is a lot of really uncomfortable, a lot of discomfort, and a lot of really kind of like, is this what I actually think it is? And how do I emotionally find myself? What do I do with myself? And I think the best thing to do with ourselves emotionally right now is to get into that very specific, just follow the protocol, right? Because then your mind can drop out of it a little bit. At least to the point where you're using more of your intuition rather than analyzing everything. And I think that that's, very, very important, because Sagittarius is the higher mind, right? So you're synthesizing and you're creating, and like it's very active and there's fire there. And this is way different. This is way much more about the intuition and discernment and very meticulous process. And I think there's something very important about this, because we want to make sure that what we're bringing into form is exactly what we want to bring into form. And I believe that there's enough confusion and disquiet and weird energy right now that we have to be mindful of what we are bringing into form. And I think that the fixed star of Aculeus right now is giving us the opportunity to have a sharper view than maybe we've had. So, boy, I'm going to leave it there, guys. Thanks for sticking with me if you've made it this far. And if you've dropped out, I totally do not blame you at all. Like, it is, it's been a rough day, and the weekend was okay. It almost felt like there wasn't even a weekend. It's just constantly in service to other people and other people's comfort levels, other people's needs, other people's whatever. And we have to make time for ourselves to process things internally, and that means turning inwards, and it also means like being able to. It also means that we have to be able to shut it off, right? We can't. It's so tempting to just go back in and go back in and go back in and just accumulate, and it's not getting us anywhere. It really isn't. And maybe that's the secret that people are adhering to right now, where they are finding that there is no problem in their life and nothing on the outside is impacting them negatively at all. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's because they have managed to just turn off all of the accumulation of information. I can't speak to that. I just know that for what I'm picking up on, and this astrology in particular, it has been essential that we get into that moon in Virgo, because the emotional hygiene is going to be Really, really important moving forward. So I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for sticking around if you've stuck around. And if you haven't, like I said, I do not blame you at all. And if anything, it's just holding space for maybe a lot of other people who are really feeling uncomfortable and kind of confused and disappointed or whatever right now. So if you are interested in a reading, you can book through catalystenergies.net. If you're not on my mailing list, you can do that through the website as well. There's a splash page that comes up. I send out about 3 emails a month that have to do with, sales of certain and new services that I'm offering and just that kind of stuff. So I don't bombard you. And of course, I'm on Telegram, I'm on Facebook. You can link to the description box from the description box below as well. Love you guys. Thanks for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. And I'm so glad that we're on this journey together. And here's to some brighter days here in the near future. So we'll be together tomorrow on the 2nd, November 2nd for the Daily Medicine Transmission. Have a great day. Take very good care of yourselves. And we'll meet again tomorrow. God bless.